Subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon so that you know when live we go. Before we begin for today, there's a small announcement. Like every Thursday, today also as part of answer writing program, we have uploaded a question on ELEARN platform. This question is from DNS dated 6th of October 2022. The idea is to enhance the learning experience from the DNS. Whatever knowledge you're gathering, you must be able to use it. When you write answers to these questions, you see how much of efficiency you have developed to put your knowledge and information in the form of an answer that will fetch you marks. Because ultimately, that's what you have to do in the mains exam. That is the way to success. So I would encourage you to attempt this question and get it evaluated by faculties at RAU'S IAS. There is an article on page number 13, The Impossible Trinity. How the free movement of capital comes with a cost. See, according to some theoretical economic reasoning and also based on some empirical evidence, economists have come up with a concept of impossible trinity. According to this concept, an economy cannot pursue independent monetary policy and also maintain a fixed exchange rate and also allow the free flow of capital across its borders. You cannot have all these three operating simultaneously. Let's try and understand the concept. Independent or sovereign monetary policy would mean that the central bank is on its will to decide on the policy rates, the interest rates. It can cut the interest rate according to its wish, of course, based on the economic imperative domestically. And when it feels fit, it can increase the interest rate. That means it is not under any undue economic pressure that would guide the direction of the policy rate. It is in the interest of the government and the central bank to maintain the policy rates because a stable policy rate keeps both the depositors and borrowers happy. Free flow of capital would mean that there is absolutely unhindered flow of capital. There is no capital control. Government has allowed for fully liberalized capital account and the country makes its currency readily available for any transaction. See, free flow of capital is required by many countries, in terms of long-term FDI investment, but free flow of capital also allows for short-term speculative investment. The foreign institutional investors, they can come and invest in the bond market, they can invest in share market, they can also invest in the currency market. FII sometimes could be the source of strength to the financial market of the nation. But the real incentive that the country has in operating free flow of capital is long-term investment in terms of foreign direct investment, FDI. But an economy is also interested in maintaining fixed exchange rate. Exchange rate here is the currency exchange rate. Suppose $1 is equal to 80 rupees. This is the exchange rate between rupee and dollar. Government tries to keep exchange rate stable so that import and export prices do not jump around very quickly. When the exporter exports goods or services to foreign consumers, the foreign consumers will have to pay the exporters. But the foreign consumers, let's say they are carrying dollars, so they have to exchange the dollar into rupee and pay the exporters. Similarly, when we import oils or other goods and services, we have to pay them in dollar. So the importers, which can also be the government, they have to collect their rupee, get it exchanged for dollar, and pay the suppliers from whom we are importing in terms of dollar. So any change in exchange rate will actually change the profit or loss of exporters and importers. That may change the trade balance. In today's globalized era, when there is liberal trade happening, fixed exchange rate helps stabilizing the economy. Monetary policy is equally important because suppose when there is recession-like situation, for instance after COVID-19, when there was economic slowdown, during those times when there is unemployment, when there is inflation, the central bank has to step in and do something to put the economy back on track. So what generally the central bank does is to reduce the interest rate. When interest rate is reduced, the cost of borrowing also reduces. So the private sector, the investors, they can borrow more money and pump in the economy. And there's a hope of central bank that it will have a trickle down effect. More investment will result in more production, more growth, more export, and more employment opportunities. And we also want investment coming from all corners of the world into our country. So we have to have free capital flow. So basically, these are the three things. In the era of international trade, international agreements, any nation, both the government and the central bank, wants to control these three things. Now let's discuss a little more as to see how changing one affects the others and why you cannot have all three operating simultaneously. Few decades back, there was a regime of capital control where nations used to regulate the flow of capital across borders. Now let's understand why it was felt that there has to be restricted flow of capital. Let's take the example of India. Suppose RBI feels the need to cut down the interest rate and interest rate was brought down just to 3%. That means investors who were carrying their money into the financial market of India will now earn only 3% interest rate because bond yield is also generally pegged to the interest rate. And suppose, as the scenario presently is, that US has increased the interest rate. In the US market, suppose the interest rate prevailing is 4%. So what will happen immediately, overnight? FII will go away. This 1% difference in the interest rate is too much. It's too much of an incentive to draw out their money from India and go to US. US is more stable economy, return is guaranteed, and it is offering higher interest rate. When money goes away from India to US, what actually happens is whatever money they were investing in Indian economy, that was in rupee. So they will collect their rupee, get it exchanged into dollar. So demand of dollar will keep on increasing and everyone is shedding away their rupee. So demand for rupee would keep on decreasing. And this action will have a direct impact on exchange rate. So if the interest rate in Indian economy has been decreased compared to the global economy, that is going to weaken Indian currency. And there are so many reasons for which I don't want my currency to be weakened. If my currency gets weakened, if rupee is depreciating with respect to dollar, then my import bill will become exorbitantly high because India imports much more than what it exports. A weaker rupee means the importer of oil will have to shed more amount of rupee to pay the same amount of dollar. If earlier $1 was 70 rupee, now $1 is 80 rupee. So previously to pay $1 bill, I had to shed 70 rupees. But now to pay the same amount of bill in terms of dollar, I have to shed 80 rupees. So import for me is getting costly. So I don't want my rupee to depreciate a lot, especially if I am an economy that imports a lot. But then you see, this will happen if I decrease the interest rate, and I could decrease the interest rate for so many reasons. Maybe the target is to increase employment. For that, I have to ease the interest rate and increase investment in the economy. But when I do it, I get messed up because rupee gets weakened, the exchange rate starts getting affected. And then my import bill will increase and inflation will increase. If inflation increases, I again will have to increase the interest rate to control the inflation. So I come back to square one. You know why this is happening? If I change the policy rate, then the exchange rate also changes. You know why? Because I'm allowing free flow of capital. When I decrease the interest rate to 3% and in US suppose it was 4% and I'm allowing all the capital from my economy to go away to US, then that's creating problem. So previously many nations were not allowing free capital flow. Once you come in, you get locked up. Of course you can go, but you cannot go all of a sudden. You see countries like China, they have this still today. They want to have sovereign monetary policy and they want to have fixed exchange rate. Because China, you understand, is an export-led economy. So it deliberately devalues its currency. If you're exporting a good equivalent to $1, then when you get it exchanged, you get 80 rupee. Suppose if rupee appreciates and now $1 is 70 rupee. Now when you export the same good worth $1, when you get it exchanged, you are getting only 70 rupee. So when the currency depreciates, exporters gains. China is an export-led economy. So it wants its currency to be at a fixed rate. And it wants to control the monetary policy as well. And when you're doing both of them, you cannot allow free capital flow and China does not allow it. But for most of the nation, free capital flow is completely allowed. Let's consider the case of UK. There's a crisis in the making in Great Britain. They allow for free capital flow and they also want independent monetary policy. But we already have discussed that changing policy rate affects exchange rate. If UK decides for monetary easing so that the government pumps in more money in the economy to bring the economy back on track, because after Brexit, UK has been facing problem in trade and employment generation. So for that reason, suppose UK reduces its interest rate to 2%. If UK reduces the interest rate, the money will go away immediately to US because US is doing Fed tapering. It is increasing its policy rate. If money goes from UK to US, you understand that the UK pound will be weakening compared to US dollar. But depreciating currency has its own problem. So you don't want that. The currency will depreciate because money that was invested in UK, that was in pound. And when the investors take away the money, they will first get it exchanged for dollar. So demand for dollar would be increasing and demand for pound would be decreasing. The only way to maintain the exchange rate is to artificially increase the demand for pound and decrease the demand for dollar. One way of doing it is to pump in dollar in the economy and take out pound. So the English central bank, using its forex reserve, will be buying the pound. So it will become a big buyer in the economy, increasing the demand for pound. It will buy the pound and the pound will be bought in exchange of dollar. So more dollar will be pumped in the economy, artificially decreasing its demand. The demand for the investor will be matched by the demand of the Central Bank of England. So the exchange rate will more or less remain fixed. But there is a limit to it. You have a limited forex reserve and you can continue like this only for some time. 6 months, year maybe. You cannot empty out your forex reserve. That is why in the impossible trilemma it is said that you cannot have all these three simultaneously operating for a long period of time. Of course, you can operate like this for some time as UK is operating. It is letting its currency depreciate and it has depreciated to a record low. But if you don't do anything about it, then quickly you will find yourself in a financial crisis. If you don't maintain the exchange rate, investments will decrease in the economy in various ways. You understand that apart from FDI, there are various kinds of investments that come in share market maybe, or currency market, or bond market. Presently in UK, bond yield is very high. Suppose the bond yield today is 5%. And an investor in US, the cost of borrowing for him is 4% because the interest rate is 4%. So at 4%, he can borrow in US market and he can bring the money and invest in the UK market, earn the return of 5%. Quite good of an investment plan. But when he borrows at 4%, he'll be borrowing in dollar. And to invest in UK, he has to get it converted into pound. And that will happen as per the prevailing exchange rate. After the investment has been done, he has earned 5% profit. On his way back home, again he have to get it exchanged because this investment is in pound. He has to go back home with dollar. So he has to get it exchanged. But now, since the exchange rate is in free fall in UK, whatever pound he has earned, now that has become even further weak. So in return, the dollar that he will be taking home will be fewer than he thought. So bond market is of no use if the exchange rate is not stable. The same goes for currency market, the same goes for stock exchange market, investments in equity. And if you think about keeping the exchange rate constant, then you have to maintain the monetary policy as per the global economy. Globally, if the interest rate is higher, you do have to keep your interest rate high. Otherwise, money will simply go away from your market. And if you keep the interest rate high, then you cannot do monetary easing in the economy. If you want to invest more to increase the production, develop more employment opportunities, you cannot do that. Your hands are tied because you are going with free capital flow and fixed exchange rate. Now, you cannot have sovereign monetary policy. You are not free to fix your interest rate. That's why it's a conundrum. That's why it's a trilemma. Now, after all these things that we have studied, let me ask you a quick question. Listen to me very carefully and then answer after due diligence. Is at the free fall, and inflation of the nation is at historic high. So it's a very, very gloomy situation for the government and the central bank of the nation. Now the question is, in this scenario, should the government come up with a tax cut policy? You take a pause at this moment and think it through. After due diligence, when you have come up with an answer, only then you resume the video. See, this scenario is exactly what UK is going through. The exchange rate has come down. The reason being that their Brexit has not been smooth. Because of that, the trade has hurt. You understand that exchange rate going low, meaning the demand for their currency has decreased. That happens when your export decreases. Because the consumers of your export has to pay you in your currency. So when your export decreases, the demand for your currency decreases. It could also mean that the economy is not doing well and the money is going away. When FII goes away from your economy, then also the exchange rate will deteriorate. The inflation presently in UK is at historic high because Russia has cut off the supply of gas. Although US and other nations are helping, but they cannot cover up for the supply that Russia was providing previously. In this scenario, the new government announced a tax cut. Although this is not without logic, the logic behind it is that when the tax cut happens, then there will be trickle-down effect. You must have heard this term. The trickle-down effect theory says that when you give more money in the hand of private sector, they will invest more. More investment, more production, more export, more job opportunities. So economy could come back on track. But empirical evidence shows that trickle-down effect doesn't actually work anywhere in the world. Even when you give money in the hands of private sector, even when you decrease the policy rate, not necessarily the private sector will actually invest. Unless the market scenario, the global prospect improves, private sector keeps sitting with the money with the safest investment. Maybe they'll put the money with the bank or in other safe securities, but they will not invest in the market. But that's not all. When you do the tax cut, meaning you are increasing the amount of currency in the market. You understand there is huge amount of inflation, and when you put more money, what will happen? When there's a tax cut, government earning will decrease. And to meet the expenditure of the government will have to borrow. The sovereign rating will deteriorate. When the sovereign rating deteriorates, then the people holding the bond issued by the government get panicky. They start selling the bond at lower price and get out of the bond market. That increases bond yield. When the bond yield increases in the market, now when the government needs to borrow and it needs to issue bond, it will have to match with the prevailing bond yield. So government borrowing cost will increase. Your earning has decreased and your borrowing cost has increased. You have put more money in the market and that will further deteriorate the exchange rate. Now get this connection right. If the inflation in the economy will increase, the exchange rate will further worsen. The value of your currency will further weaken. And we have discussed earlier, when the value of the currency further decreases, then the money in the stock exchange, the money in the currency market, the money in the bond market won't come. The future prospect is very weak because the government earning has decreased. Inflation will further increase, and to counter this, the central bank will have to increase the interest rate. Increasing the interest rate will further make borrowing difficult for private sector. So you are not just looking at low employment and deteriorating exchange rate and high inflation. You are looking at bond market crisis. You are looking at banking crisis. Higher borrowing rate will increase the cost of mortgage. So you are also looking at housing crisis. You know what? You are moving towards assured financial crisis. So you don't cut tax at this point. That's why the UK government, after announcement, has rolled it back. But the question is, why did you bring it at the first place? Why don't you listen to the advisors? There is a news article on page number 1, Nobel for work on quantum mechanics. This year's Nobel Prize in Physics have been awarded to 3 scientists for their work in advancement in quantum mechanics. Particularly, they have worked the theoretical details to show that quantum entanglement is real. And this will open up the doors for supercomputers and quantum encryption in communication. See, I'll try to put it as simplistically as I can. And you understand that in civil service mains exam or in prelims, they do not ask you the details of any technology. rather their communication. But they do ask the basic science. So you need to have very rudimentary idea of quantum entanglement, and largely you have to know about the application of quantum entanglement. But nevertheless, I'll tell you what it is, and then I'll try to explain why it is. But you would understand my limitation by the fact that even Einstein could not digest the fact that there exists a phenomena called as quantum entanglement. Let me first tell you what exactly it is. Quantum entanglement is a physical phenomena where pair or a group of particles when generated, the quantum state, or to keep things simple, let's just say the state of each particle in the pair or in the group cannot be described independently of the state of others. So if there is a pair of particle and if you know definitely the state of one of them, then you also know definitely the state of the other one. So they cannot exist in the state independent of each other. Or to say in brevity, they are entangled. Quantum entanglement is not just restricted when the particles are nearby. Once you have created two particles in an entangled state, and even when the distance becomes large to the extent that you take these two to the opposite end of the universe, still quantum entanglement will hold. So spatial separation, no matter how much it is, does not matter. Quantum entanglement comes out of mathematical calculation of quantum mechanics. Einstein and two of his colleagues, they worked the maths out and they figured that such a physical phenomena is the outcome of mathematics of quantum mechanics. But Einstein could not digest the fact that when the physical particles are far away and there is no way in which they can interact with each other, still one will influence the other. This can blow up your mind. But boys and girls, this is real. And Nobel Prize has been awarded for this. You know that Nobel Prize are awarded only for things that have been proven right. Nobel Prize is not awarded for theoretical research work. You understand how serious this is? How fascinating this is? Two particles at great distance, even at the opposite end of the universe, they are still entangled. There is some quantum relation between the two particles that we do not understand completely yet, but we have done the lab experiments and we can verify that this quantum relation is real. Einstein, during his time, dismissed the idea as a spooky action. And then a lot of research work has gone into to verify the finding at the first place of Einstein and his team, and then his dismissal of the concept. But now we know for the fact that quantum entanglement is real. Let me attempt to make things a little more simple. Suppose there are two boxes. In one of the box, there is a red ball, and in the other box, there is a blue ball. These boxes are completely opaque, and there is no way you can find out the color of the ball contained in the box just by looking at the box. These boxes are taken far away from each other, and then one of the boxes is opened. When you open up the box, you see that the ball is red one. The moment you do the measurement, the moment you found out that this box is having red colored ball, it has also been found with certainty that the other box has the blue ball. So the state of existence of this box with the ball depends upon the measurement result that has been done on this box. Now this is happening in the physical world at the macroscopic level, things that we can feel and see. Pretty much the same thing happens at microscopic level. If you create two electrons and you know that electrons revolve around the nucleus, suppose one of the electron is revolving around the nucleus in clockwise direction and the other electron is revolving around the nucleus in anti-clockwise direction. There are many filters that can filter the electrons in the clockwise direction and the electrons in the anti-clockwise direction. So after filtering, you have got two electrons and you have entangled them up. If these two electrons are entangled, now the quantum mechanics tells us that even if these two electrons are far separated from each other, they will remain entangled. That's the mystery of quantum mechanics. Now we do not understand why. After going far away from each other, maybe the spin could have reversed. Initially, if one of the electron was revolving in clockwise direction, and technically that is said to have positive spin, and the other electron was revolving in anti-clockwise direction, and technically that is called to have negative spin. If this was the case, one with positive spin and one with negative spin, this will continue to be the state even when they are far separated. You can wonder why. Even I wonder why. But we have to accept that this is a fact. Even after going far away from each other, there was a possibility of spin reversal. And theoretically, we can think that both the electrons could have had positive spin. But it does not happen. It doesn't happen that way. Once entangled, they remain entangled no matter what is the physical distance between them. It's mysterious, isn't it? Well, the best thing is that we do not have to break our head over understanding why it is so. All we have to know, it is so. And if it is so, what can we do with it? There are two immediate implications of this. We can use quantum entanglement, and you might have heard about it already. We can use it in quantum communication. In quantum cryptography, as we have discussed previously in the previous DNS, you must also have heard and read about it. Photons are sent from the satellite. Two streams of photon are sent, one to the sender and the other to the receiver. These photons act as the key to decrypt the message. When senders and receivers they exchange the messages, they are sent in encrypted form. To decrypt the message, the key comes from the satellite directly. So there is no chance of hacking up the key and reading the message. If you want to learn more about it, then search on YouTube with the keyword quantum key distribution. Prefix that with RAU'S IAS DNS. You'll easily search the DNS where we have discussed it. Now here's the thing, when you send two streams of photons, you send entangled photons. The distance between the sender and receiver could become very, very large. They could be in two different cities, in two different countries. And yet, the quantum state of one photon will depend upon the other photon. One with the receiver, one with the sender. And that's how photons coming long distance from the satellite, they can be stabilized with respect to sender and receiver. Quantum entanglement can also be used for teleportation. That sounds like a sci-fi presently. You can be teleported to any part of the universe. But by the fact that quantum entanglement is real, that is no more any sci-fi. That's a real thing. It can be done. Coming back to the same news article, it also mentions that Nobel Prize in Chemistry this year has been given for click chemistry. Click chemistry, as the name suggests, it is used to describe reactions that are fast. It's like if you put two of the substrates together, it just joins with each other in a click. And in sequence of reactions, you have a macromolecules formed out of smaller molecules joining with each other. So the reaction is very fast, it is very high yielding, it is clean, meaning there are not much side products, and hence the name click chemistry. The natural outcome of click chemistry is bioorthogonal reactions. You know, when reaction is fast when the affinity of two things to join together is very high. And suppose A and B are two substrates, they are two reactants. An affinity of A to join with B and vice versa is very high, then you are going to get the product AB. Now, even when in the environment you have C and D and E, but A and B are so loyal, they won't go anywhere else. That's the concept of click chemistry, as we have understood. But you see, this can also be used in bioorthogonal reaction. The term orthogonal in mathematics and physics and also in chemistry is used to describe two things which are independent of each other. Bioorthogonal reaction would suggest that two reactions will happen independent of each other. One reaction will be of biochemistry, meaning the chemical reactions that's happening inside the living cell. That's the biochemical reaction that is naturally happening in our body. And one of the reaction will be based on the molecules that we have inserted externally. But these two reactions are independent of each other. So the entire system will be undergoing bioorthogonal reactions. And you understand the basis of this is that the molecules that we have inserted, they undergo fast and high yielding clean reaction, meaning they exhibit the phenomena of click chemistry. And that's fundamentally because the affinity of molecules that we have put together to react among themselves is very high. So the inserted molecules, it will react only at a specific site with a predetermined chemical molecule. And rest of the reactions going inside the living cell will remain unhindered. And that's what we have always wanted. The chemical reactions inside our body, they are based on chains of carbon.
The proteins, amino acids, they all are based on long carbon chain. In the concept of click chemistry, instead of using long carbon chain, we use a short carbon chain and we use heteroatoms like nitrogen and oxygen. We'll not delve deep into it, but just to give you a little bit of idea, there could be C triple bond N in the molecule that is used to show click chemistry, or there could be C double bond O. These are reactive sites and they will show intense amount of reaction with a particular chemical site. So reaction will be fast, high yielding and clean. And because they are highly specific, so they will be non-invasive, non-intruding, non-hindering with the normal biochemical reactions happening inside the body. That's it. That's all the concept that we have to know. Although I have huge urge to tell you more because my optional was chemistry, but then I also have the emotional intelligence to understand your state of mind and awareness of the fact that it's not at all required for the purpose of GS. So let's feel happy and contented with whatever we have discussed. What's important to remember from here would be this: the application. One of the prime application ever since click chemistry concept was popularized since 1990s was to study the biomolecules. Any biomolecule like protein, lipid, amino acids, we can study them in real time without hindering their flow in the body, without reacting with them. That means without creating cellular toxicity. There are many techniques like bioluminescence, among others, that can actually give us the protein or the lipid profile using some molecules that we will insert inside the body. But they will not hinder the normal physiological function of these lipids and proteins. Similar to this, there are other functions like tracking the active enzymes. But perhaps the biggest application in the near future would be in drug delivery to specialized cells like cancer cells. Drug delivery is important for the correct functioning of drugs in living things. When the drug acts at the wrong site or on the wrong time, it may not have the desired effect or it may have the undesired consequence. So, drug delivery has to be very precise. And one way to improve its efficacy is to minimize the side effects. Bioorthogonal chemistry has been studied as a method to control the release, localization, and formation of drugs in vivo because they are specific. There's a concept that we may not necessarily be aware of called as click to release based upon click chemistry. Click to release method uses the bioorthogonal chemistry to control the timing and location of drug release. You must be aware of other precision methods for drug delivery like nanotechnology. But the nanotechnology has their own concern, which click chemistry will not be having. There is an article on page number 15. Religion based population balance can no longer be ignored, says the chief of RSS, Mr. Mohan Bhagwat. He has said on Wednesday that India needed a population control policy that was applicable to all for the next 50 years to make population an asset for the country. This debate keeps making round in the newspaper as to what should be the strategy for control of population. Should it be increase in development in all sections of society among all community so that the fertility rate comes down and the population gets automatically controlled? Or should it be done coercively by a law via population control policy? There has been various reports and empirical evidences that population control is linked intricately with fertility rate. The population related problems like poverty, health issues, they are improving continuously in India after independence. And it is not the population which is a problem, it is the issue of fertility which is linked with development. So, we are going to discuss various strategies that India adopted in the past for population control and regarding the present scheme of things as to what is there for population management. We'll begin our discussion with fertility because fertility is a crucial factor that decides the population growth and the developmental stage of the nation. Fertility rate in India has been declining continuously after independence. There are two terms here that you need to be familiar with. One is total fertility rate. Total fertility rate is a measure of number of children born to a woman at the end of childbearing age. Replacement rate is the average number of children a woman needs to have to keep the population at a constant size. Ideally, if parents have two children, then those two children will replace the two parents and the population should be constant. But there are unforeseen instances of accidents, of some epidemic, death due to some disease. So, if two parents are giving birth to two children, then because of some external factors, the population will actually decrease. So, to keep the population constant, the total fertility rate must be slightly higher than 2, and that is considered to be 2.1. So, the replacement rate is considered to be 2.1. Fertility rate in India has continuously decreased. In 1950s, the fertility rate was 6. In 1960s, it reduced only marginally to 5.9. Despite massive push for family planning during 1960s and 70s, including the forced sterilization program Nasbandi during emergency led to decrement of only 17% in the total fertility rate from 5.9 to 4.9 by 1980. It came down to 3.4 by 1990. But after 1990 till 2015, the decline in fertility rate was the highest from 3.4 to 2.3. And in 2017, we came down to 2.2. And by end of 2020, we already have achieved the fertility rate equal to the replacement rate of 2.1. And in 2022, the fertility rate has gone below the replacement rate. It is presently 2. So, what is the issue when the fertility rate has decreased already so much? The issue is that there is huge difference in the fertility rate from urban population to rural population, from literate population to illiterate population, and there's difference among communities too. So we need to correct those differences in the fertility rate, and for that, what path will be adopted, that we have to choose. Whether that will be aggressive family planning as we have seen from 1960 to 1980, or through punitive measures and coercive actions, or we do it through increasing the aspiration of people and development at individual and societal level as happened after 1990. This graph clearly shows that rate of decrement of total fertility rate is much higher after 1990. This means that development is the best tool to control population. We have tried other things and we have not gained the desired result. We have tried aggressive family planning from 1960, and from 1975, targets were given to the family planning workers regarding sterilization, condom distribution, and intrauterine device insertion. Because of the targets, the family planning scheme became coercive. But in 1994, everything ended. In 1994, UN organized a conference on population and development called as Cairo Conference on Population and Development. In this conference, it was decided that coercive family planning is not going to work, and the target based family planning schemes were dropped by the nations. But even then, punitive policies were carried on by many states in India. Punishments were given in various forms for having more children than two. For instance, denial of maternity leave for the third child, limiting the benefits of the maternity schemes as well, and in some cases, disqualification for contesting local elections. Till date in India, there are 8 states: Rajasthan, Andhra Pradesh, Odisha, Maharashtra, Gujarat, Uttarakhand, Bihar, and now Assam, which has two-child policies. Assam is the state with most punitive action. It has barred anyone with more than 2 children from running any kind of elections, holding a government job, or being eligible for government schemes and entitlements. You must also be aware of a private member bill, Population Regulation Bill 2019. This bill calls for punitive action against people with more than 2 living children and making them devoid of any government services. The bill also suggests that government employees should give an undertaking that they will not procreate more than 2 children. However, there are empirical evidence that punitive policies brings the burden of disqualification and disincentives on already marginalized section of the society. That is why National Human Rights Commission's 2003 declaration has called two-child policy prescription a violation of the principle of informed choice and human rights of the people. According to National Human Rights Commission, there are evidence that two-child policy has led to desertion of wives, desertion and killing of female children, non-registration of births, non-immunization of daughters, sex selection, and forced abortion. In this context, it is very important for you to be aware of India's stand at the Global Population Summit that happened in Nairobi in 2019. At the Global Population Summit, India has took a stand that the best way for population control is to give voluntary and informed choices of contraceptives to people. India has reiterated its stand of guaranteeing voluntary and informed choice of contraception to people. India also said that it would increase its basket of contraceptives and improve the quality of family planning services. So that can be taken as the official stand that India took at the Global Population Summit as the stand of Government of India on population control. So it's very, very important, and this has to be used in any means answer pertaining to population control. So now we are looking at aspirational revolution. That seems to be the only way out for sustaining population at constant level. As we have seen earlier that after 1990, there was drastic decrement in total fertility rate. And we all are aware that socio-economic condition of people improved at a higher pace. The growth rate of Indian economy was higher after 1990. So socio-economic transformation of Indian society has played a great role in decreasing the total fertility rate and arresting the rate of increase of population. Over this period, agriculture became an increasingly small part of Indian economy. The enrollment rate in school and colleges increased. The per capita income also increased because of increased opportunity in economic activity. So now a farmer does not look at his children and see them as manpower who can help in agricultural activities in the field, but rather the parents are more concerned for sending their children to better quality of private schools and then coaching. So it was the aspirational revolution which caused decrement in total fertility rate in India. What the government needs to ensure is that the health and family welfare system is up to this challenge and provides contraception and sexual and reproductive health services that allow individuals to have only as many children as he or she wants. In the final stage of our discussion, we will emphasize more on this section. It is the aspiration and development of the society that actually causes decrement in the total fertility rate and improves the quality of human resource so that a nation can capitalize on the demographic dividend. This is an important aspect that can be asked in the exam. How population is dependent upon development or vice versa? Does increase in population cause increase in poverty and suffering of people? And what could be the best strategy in controlling the population of a nation? For this, you have to have certain data to back your stand. Your stand will always be the stand that Government of India took at Global Population Summit in Nairobi in 2019. And you need to back that stand with the data as follows. The point we are trying to prove is that development is related with the fertility rate of a society. For instance, the total fertility rate in India in the urban region is 1.7. It has gone down from the replacement rate of 2.1. But in the rural region, it is 2.4. And we know the developmental gaps between the urban region and the rural region. 7 states in India have recorded total fertility rate higher than the national average of 2.2. And these 7 states constitute 45% of the total population of India as per the last census. They are Uttar Pradesh having total fertility rate of 3, Bihar 3.2, Madhya Pradesh 2.7, Rajasthan 2.6, Assam 2.3, Chhattisgarh 2.4 and Jharkhand 2.5. These states are relatively lagging in the developmental stage compared to other states. So here once again we have shown that total fertility rate is actually the indicator of the developmental stage of a society. Further, total fertility rate goes below 2 both in rural and urban areas where girls complete schooling, and it reduces even further if they pass college. In Bihar, the total fertility rate is 3.2, and the maximum percentage of literacy in women is 26.8%. In Kerala, which has lowest fertility rate in India, has the literacy rate of 99.3% among women. So this clearly shows that the development at individual and social level is the determining factor of total fertility rate. The relatively well-off states of the south have lower total fertility rate. In Kerala is 1.7, Tamil Nadu 1.6, Karnataka 1.7, Maharashtra 1.7, Andhra Pradesh 1.7, Telangana 1.7. If you talk on the community level, different religious social communities in India also have different total fertility rate. But even in that, the determining factor is development rather than the religion or the social belief. For instance, the total fertility rate in 2011 in Uttar Pradesh was 3.3. In Kerala, it was 1.8. The national average was 2.4. If you look at two major communities in these two states, in Uttar Pradesh, the Muslim population rose by around 25%. But in Kerala, the Muslim population rose by around 13% between 2001 and 2011. If you look at the Hindu population in Uttar Pradesh, it rose by 18.9%. And the Hindu population in Kerala rose by 2.8%. So if you see, the Muslim population rose greater in Uttar Pradesh than in Kerala, and same goes for Hindu population, and same would go for any other community or any other religion or even atheist people. So this is basically a developmental phenomena and not a phenomena so much related with the belief or the religion or the caste or the custom. So using these data, you can comprehensively prove your stand that total fertility rate is actually the indicator of the developmental level of a community, of a state, of a nation. In conclusion, I'll say two things. Number one, total fertility rate and the rate of population growth is dependent upon the developmental stage of a nation. And number two, people should not be looked as burden. So we should not coercively try to reduce the population of a nation. Rather, we should ensure the development of every citizen. If we do that, there will be no problem at all. Julian Simons, in his book, The Ultimate Resource, has written that human beings are the ultimate resource. Human beings interact with each other in a positive some ways. Population is never a problem, provided there is a skill, there is civic sense. Nicholas Eberstadt, he was an American political economist. He has said that there is no correlation between population density and poverty, implying that population of a nation does not put burden on the resources of the nation. He gives example that Monaco has 40 times density of Bangladesh. Still, Monaco is very prosperous. Similarly, Bahrain has 3 times population density of India, and HDI index of Bahrain is 0.8. So population of a nation is resource and not a burden.